How long could Renaissance rapiers get? Hi folks, Matt Easton here, Schola Gladiatoria. Now, I've been criticised for using an overly long rapier. That's right, people go, Matt, why are you stabbing me from so far away? So I use a Coveton rapier here with a 45-inch blade, and I consider that perfectly fine for my height. I'm 6'1", about 184 centimetres. And I absolutely love the length of this. To me, that makes sense for a rapier. However, some people prefer shorter rapiers, and some people argue that rapiers are at their extreme length at 45 inches. And I respond to them, oh no, there are lots of rapiers around of that kind of length. Admittedly, there are shorter ones as well, but there are lots of them, and we're going to look at some examples in this video from the Wallace Collection. So we're going to look at the Wallace Collection online catalogue, and I'm going to show you a bunch of rapiers which are about this length. I'll look at some shorter ones as well, but about this length and longer. Hopefully by the end of this video you'll have a good idea of how long Renaissance rapiers were. But before I jump into that content, I want to mention that this video is brought to you by the kind sponsorship of Wondrium. Wondrium is the service where you can learn about a vast number of topics. Your brain is going to love this place. And Wondrium's actually been hugely useful to me personally, because there's a lot of topics I cover on my channel here where I don't necessarily know a huge amount about it when I start researching it, and Wondrium is a great place to learn some foundational backgrounds on a vast number of topics. Whether it's for your hobbies, your career, or even just general interest in passing some time, you're going to find stuff on Wondrium that's going to fascinate you. Wondrium has a very carefully curated collection of content, including long and short form documentaries, travelogues, how-tos, courses, whole bunch of stuff here for you to learn, improve your knowledge, and even improve your skills. One of the things I love the most about Wondrium is whenever I log on, there's new content. It's constantly growing, constantly new content being added on there. So even if you've watched everything on Wondrium, which would take you a very long time, there's going to be new stuff next time you log on. Most recently, I've been watching How the Medici Shaped the Renaissance, a multi-part documentary series, and it's absolutely fascinating. I love Florence. I love the history of Florence. I've been there a number of times, so I was somewhat familiar with some of this stuff, but I tell you, even if you've been to Florence a number of times, you are going to learn stuff from this course. For example, did you know that the Medici family had 4 members as popes? 4 popes were from the Medici family. Mind-blowing. So if you want to try out Wondrium now, and why wouldn't you, I've got a free trial for you. That's right. So if you want to show your support for the channel, but also try out Wondrium, get something for free, try out Wondrium right now. The link's down below, but you can also go to wondrium.com/Schola Gladiatoria, and you can experience a free trial of Wondrium right now. So thanks again to Wondrium for sponsoring this video. Now let's get back to the main content. So let's have a look at some examples of some gorgeous rapiers from the Wallace Collection, where you can actually see that they have blades equally long to this one that I use on a regular week in, week out basis, at least when I'm doing rapier. But before we go into those specific examples, I do want to reiterate that yes, indeed, there are shorter rapiers. Sometimes they're shorter for practical reasons because they're easier to wear, sometimes because of legal reasons. There were certain places at certain times, including in England, where they specified how long your blade could be. If you're going to use it with a paired weapon, that changes things perhaps slightly as opposed to a single weapon. There's all sorts of considerations like this. And we should also bear in mind that when we're looking at antiques, and I have some antique examples, I'm very lucky there. That one, incidentally, just there is an English rapier from about 1620 to 40, and it has a blade of just under 40 inches. Okay, and we're measuring from the cross here, down there. We're not measuring from the top of the cup or swept hilt, whatever we've got, we're measuring from the cross. And absolutely, that's kind of probably in the middle range. So just to summarize, if you don't have time to watch the whole rest of this video, though obviously I'd like it if you do, I would say that yes, you can find rapiers with 35-inch blades, you can find them with 45-inch blades and longer, and very occasionally shorter, but with the antiques, we've always got to be a bit careful because sometimes they've been shortened either deliberately or because they broke their tip, or during the life of it being a collectible or on a wall it's had the tip damaged and has been reshaped or repointed. So sometimes they're not still at their full length. Just like with Japanese swords, sometimes they got shortened. They can't be made longer. So let's look at some specific examples from the Wallace collection that have blades of comparable length to this and longer. So first up, massive kudos to the Wallace collection, who have this amazing resource of that you can search online database of images. So if we go in here and you can search through all different fields, but let's just type in here rapier. And boom, immediately we come up with absolute tons of rapiers, and you can open up each of these individually and you can look for what you're looking for. You can just look at pretty pictures, and obviously you could type in dagger or you could type in poleaxe or whatever you like in here, and you can see a whole bunch of stuff. If we just click on a random example there, you can go into the thing, you can find its stats. They don't always have all of the stats, but they very often have quite a lot of them. And you can zoom in to some degree and have a good old look at the rapier. So a fantastic resource. So now let's look at some examples where they've got blades of equal length or longer to mine. So first up, to say that it's pretty easy to find examples of rapiers that are shorter than 45 inches. Now 45 inches for the metric out there is about 114, so 114 centimeters, okay? So, you know, here's an example with one of 111, there's one of 110, both very nice swept hilt rapiers. That one's Spanish with a swept hilt, and this one is Italian and German composite, dates to about 1600. Again with a simple swept hilt. And here's another lovely Italian example, Milanese example from about 1610, 1620, with a form of swept hilt with a characteristic style of knuckle bow that comes away from the pommel, very cool looking. And this is a 111 centimeter blade. And I have to say, before I go into the longer ones, this sort of length is very, very common. Just checking my ruler here, that is 43 inches. In case you didn't know, UK rulers have inches and metric on. We've got imperial and metric because we use both. It's very confusing, but it's useful when I'm making videos for both Europeans and Americans and everybody else in the world as well. So 111 centimeters is quite a common sort of measurement, so about 43-inch blade. That's relatively common. I assume that they've measured the blade from the cross of the guard. It's maybe not always the case, but I hope it is, because otherwise it completely skews my whole data here. So yeah, lovely rapier there, but again, that's a 43-inch blade. So it's not quite as long as mine, but it's quite a common length for modern HEMA use, quite a popular length actually. So if we move up to the next one here, you'll notice we're up to now 112.5. So we're getting close to kind of 44 inches. Here, and this is a Spanish rapier. Also important to note, don't think all Spanish rapiers are cup hilts like mine, because the Spanish used swept hilts extensively, and cupped hilts really are something that's becomes more popular as we get closer to the middle of the 1600s, and in fact was still being used at the beginning of the 1800s. In fact, in the time of Angelo, it was still being used in the late 1700s in Spain, so they were quite backward in that regard. But the cup hilt, although it's very popular for modern HEMA practice, is actually not terribly popular up till about 1630 in rapiers. Anyway, swept hilt from Spain, blade 112 centimeters and a half, or about 44 inches. Okay, we move to the next one here. So this is a rapier from Italy. Absolutely amazing quality of manufacture here, just stunning, absolutely stunning, beautiful proportions as well. And this blade is now up to 114 centimeters. So this is a 45-inch blade. It's an Italian swept hilt rapier from about 1600, with the same length blade as the type of rapier that I prefer to use. I really like 45-inch blade. I feel longer might start to become a bit unwieldy, but 45 inches just seems to be about right for me at the moment anyway. So here's an example, not difficult to find, 114 centimeters. Move to another example here. This is actually English, the blade is German, but it's a very characteristically English swept hilt style of hilt. Dates to the early years of the 1600s, about the time of Joseph Swetnam, for any of you who study treatises. And this blade, again, 114 centimeters, it's a 45-inch blade. So again, bang on, exactly the same as my practice rapier. Again, this is a gorgeous rapier, and it is actually the one that my previous rapier, made by Marco Dinelli, was based on, although of course I didn't have all the decoration on it because that would have made it worth about 10 times as much. So, fantastic rapier. Blade, normal length. Incidentally, in terms of weights, the weights vary quite a lot, and they don't always go with length. The weights vary from about 1 kilogram up to about 1.5 kilograms, so 1,000 grams to 1,500 grams. This one's pretty much in the middle, it's about 1.3 kilograms. So let's go up to the next one. Now this is a more, what some of you might think of as a typical Spanish cup hilt, but it's Italian. So the reason that cup hilts were particularly popular in southern Italy is because the Kingdom of Naples was closely connected with the Kingdom of Spain and the Netherlands as well. So Spanish style pervaded those areas. So cup hilts were actually very popular in the south of Italy. They were used in the north of Italy as well, but particularly popular in the south. This is an Italian cup hilt in the Spanish style, I would say. And this is a 45-inch blade, 114 centimetres again. Weight, 1.2 kilograms. It's actually slightly heavier than my training rapier down there, but it's about the same as my other cup hilt rapier. Okay, so we're loads of examples around 45-inch blades or 114 centimetres. Here's another example. This is actually slightly longer. This is, again, a Spanish swept hilt. This isn't a cup hilt, it's a Spanish swept hilt. And this is actually a composite, so we can't really trust the hilt, but the blade does indeed date to about 1600, okay, and the blade is 115 centimetres long, 0.7, which is in inches, 115.7, it's, yeah, about, oh, it's 46 inches, so we're up to 46 inches now. Okay, next example, this is back to Italy again, gorgeous rapier, love this, dates to about 1630. 1.3 kilograms, so it's about the same weight as my heavier rapier, and the blade, again, 46 inches. Not difficult to find, right there in the Wallace collection. Obviously I'm only picking one collection and I'm only picking swords that apply to this particular video, but nevertheless, there we go, 46-inch blade, not difficult to find at all. Next example we come up to is a South European, I would say Italian, hilt, coupled with a German blade. German blades were exported, as I've made a recent video about actually. German blades were exported from the early medieval period right the way through to modern times all over the world, including down to Italy, despite the fact that Italy had a huge blade making industry of its own. Sometimes you get a German blade married to an Italian hilt. They could have been carried somewhere else. Doesn't have to be in Italy, could have been a French person with an Italian hilt and a German blade, or an English person. This is 1.13 kilograms, quite a light rapier. It's about as light as my practice one, and it's got a 46-inch blade, 115.5 centimetres, just a shade under 46 inches. Let's go on to the next one now. So we're going up, 116 centimetres, this absolutely stunning example, Andrea Ferrara blade. This is an earlier blade. The blade dates to as early as 1530, so around the time of Achille Marozzo, and originally would have been mounted on a simple finger-ringed side sword type hilt, but then was later on in the late 1500s married to a new swept hilt, more rapier style hilt. But is this a side sword? Is this a rapier? This is a great example. It's neither, is it? It's whatever you want. It's a sword. Okay, spada. There we go. Let's use Italian. But it's got a 116.1 centimetre blade, which means that we are now, okay. So now we're just coming up to 46 inches. So previously, those previous ones I said were 46 were actually more 45 and a half. So we're in the 45-46 inch range, 116 centimetres. Next example, cup hilt. The blade probably from Spain. This is what many people would say this is a Spanish cup hilt rapier, but the hilt is actually from Naples, but under the Spanish influence. So it's an Italo-Spanish cup hilt rapier, 1.2 kilograms. And the blade is 118 centimetres long. This is getting pretty long now. So this is over 46 inches. This is about 46.5 inches. So that's pretty long, and in fact many modern HEMA tournaments wouldn't allow this perfectly historical rapier because it would be deemed too long. That's right, despite the fact it's sitting right there in the Wallace collection. So I'd say maybe those rules need redefining, or maybe we need separate categories for short rapier and long rapier. might not be a bad idea. Anyway, there's a historical cup hilt with a 46.5-inch blade. On to the next example. This is beautiful. Look at the proportions of that. Beautiful swept hilt there. 1.4 kilograms. This is no lightweight, but the length of the blade, 119.9. Let's call it 120. Okay. Now we are at 47 inches, folks. 47 inches. You didn't expect to see a 47-inch blade on this channel, did you? Well, now you have. Well, you probably expected it on a big two-handed sword, but not on a one-handed sword that only weighs 1.4 kilograms. Amazing. And this dates to about 1600. What a gorgeous Italian rapier with a heck of a blade on it. Massive. Longer than my practice rapier, so people who fence against me, stop complaining about the reach of my rapier. This is gorgeous. It says North European. It could well be English, but could be Dutch. I would say Dutch or English, could even possibly be Scandinavian. Blade German. This isn't a form of Northern European cup hilt. Okay, so while the Spanish had those very deep cups, much like my practice one, in Northern Europe, like England and the Netherlands, we often had quite shallow cups that become like dish hilts, essentially, that go into early small swords, so-called transitional rapiers. Some people would call this a transitional rapier. But it ain't no small sword. Look at the length of the blade on this beast. And bear in mind, this weighs 1.6 kilograms. That's considerably heavier than a lot of medieval arming swords or falchions or things like that. So just because something looks narrow, don't think it's light. Oh no. So a modern fencing épée weighs about 500 grams, 600 grams. This weighs 1600 grams. This is a whole kilogram heavier than an épée. So don't ever compare these with a modern épée. They are just so different, even if they superficially look the same in a picture. This is a big sword, 1.6 kilograms and 123 centimetre blade, which is, we're at it. We're over 48 inches. So we're now over 4 feet long. Just the blade. That is an absolute beast, isn't it? It's massive. Oh God, I'd love a replica of this. And we've still got 2 more to go. So we've got another one here. This is much earlier. This is about 1620. This is a Spanish, again, swept hilt. Spanish swept hilt, not a cup hilt. This weighs in at 1.6 kilograms again, so we're at the same weight. But the blade, again, 123.4 centimetres. So this is 4 feet long blade. Just the blade, not total length, just the blade is over 48 inches. And the final example here, this is an absolute monster. Though, you know, I have to say, it's got an equally long blade, 48 inches or 123.6 centimetres. Look at that thing, it's gorgeous, the proportions of it. But 1.23 kilograms, that weighs about the same as mine here, but it's got 3 inches more of blade on it. And it's a swept hilt, probably Italian swept hilt on a German blade. Whopping great blade. So there we go. So this is obviously just a cursory look at rapier lengths, and I haven't looked at all the shorter ones particularly, but I can fully admit that they're there. And if we look at the corpus of materials for rapiers, it is really common to find rapiers with blades ranging between about 35 inches and about 45 inches. That's the kind of sweet spot, the kind of the kind of biggest bit on the graph of rapiers, between 35 inches and 45 inches. So up to 114 centimeters. But it's not that difficult to find rapiers longer than that. And as we've seen here, just in one collection, just in the Wallace collection, we can find examples with blades all the way up to 48 inches. Are there longer ones out there? If you know of a rapier in a collection which has a blade that's even longer than 123 centimetres, or 123.5 centimetres in this case, if you know one with a blade even longer than that, why don't you let me know down in the comments? And I hope this has been somewhat interesting, hopefully illuminating. And the weights, I mean, we could do a whole video talking about the weights there, because the weights are very interesting. Size for size, a rapier that you think is going to be a lot heavier is not always. And some rapiers are considerably heavier than you might think. 1.6 kilograms is heavy for a one-handed sword. It's heavier than most katana. It's as heavy as some long swords. It's heavier than most arming swords by a big margin. It's heavy. Most sabers, most military sabers, weigh about 800 to 1,000 grams, and some of these rapiers are 1.6 kilograms. They're 1,600 grams. But yeah, anyway, comments down below. Thanks again to Wondrium. Check out that link. Great sponsors of the channel. Really appreciative. And I hope that I will see you back on the channel really soon. I have been Matt Easton, and I will continue to be. Cheers for watching, folks. Thanks for watching. We've got extra videos on Patreon. Please give our Facebook a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Cheers, folks.